I'll verify the checkable claims against sources before rewriting. Search budget ran out partway through verification, so a few items below are flagged in the notes as checked against the brief only. Everything else was confirmed against ABC News, Roadside America, the TSHA Handbook of Texas, ABC 13, VinePair, and Atlas Obscura. In the early 2000s, a man in far west Texas got so angry watching a goat drink beer on a Sunday, a day when blue laws banned alcohol sales to humans, that he castrated the animal sometime overnight. The goat was the mayor. The man was charged with felony animal cruelty. And as ABC News reported it at the time, the charge couldn't be attempted murder because, and I quote, Clay Henry is a goat. Now, the version of this story floating around the internet says a town elected a goat as judge and he served for 12 years. That's not quite right. The truth is weirder. This wasn't a judge. It was a mayor. It wasn't one goat. It was a dynasty. And the town was half invention, a near ghost town rebuilt from almost nothing into a Wild West stage set. So here's the first question. How does a goat end up holding political office in America? To answer that, you have to understand what Lajitas, Texas, actually is. Lajitas sits on a bluff over the Rio Grande on the western edge of Big Bend National Park. The name is Spanish for Little Flat Rocks, after the Bucayus limestone of the area. And it was a real place with a real history. A crossing on the old Comanche Trail, a trading post opened in 1899, a post office by 1904, a cavalry presence during the Pershing years, and a local economy tied to the quicksilver mines up the road. But when those mines closed, the town went with them. According to the Texas State Historical Association, by the time rancher Rex Ivy bought the property in 1949, the population of Lajitas was down to 4 people. Then came a Houston entrepreneur named Walter Misha. The Handbook of Texas says Misha began development and restoration of the community in 1976 through a subsidiary called Arrow Development Company, and that Ivy sold him part of the Lajitas area in 1977. What Misha built was a Wild West-style resort. Condos, motels, restaurants, shops, a hotel, a golf course, an airstrip. Not a reconstruction of what had stood there so much as a frontier fantasy laid over the bones of an almost dead border town. By the mid-1980s, the handbook says, Lajitas was a resort with about 50 residents and 15 businesses. So one night during a freak snowstorm, according to VinePair's account, Misha and some visiting Houston friends gathered in a bar and decided their little resort town needed a municipal government. It needed a mayor. Their candidate was a man named Tommy Steele, who owned a Houston construction company. Seemed reasonable enough, but a local named Bill Ivy had a problem with that. Here's Ivy's own account, captured on camera years later by ABC affiliate KTRK. That's just not right. If some old goat from Houston can become mayor of Lajitas, my beer-drinking goat can become mayor. So I contested that election. Ivy's goat had a name, Clay Henry, and a campaign manager, a man named Jim Woodward from Uvalde. The campaign slogan, according to Ivy, was kept deliberately simple. You just have to give a darn. Tommy Steele won the first election, but Clay Henry won the next one. You'll see the date given as 1986, sometimes 1987, and KTRK's reporting is blunt about it. It started in the 1980s, and nobody really knows exactly when. Now, here's the important legal detail. Lajitas is unincorporated. It's not a city, it has no charter. As ABC News noted, the office doesn't come with any legal powers. The mayor's compensation is free beer from admiring townspeople and visitors. Bottle by Longneck Bottle. Roadside America's visitors recorded the staple as Lone Star Longnecks, though other accounts name other brands. Clay Henry's pen sat near the local bar, and by one telling the bar took his name, the Thirsty Goat Saloon. So the second question, what happens when a goat mayor dies? Does democracy resume? Does a human take over? No, you start a dynasty. The first Clay Henry died in 1992, and the story of how he died is, depending on who you ask, either tragic or darkly hilarious. According to Bill Valentine, who ran the trading post in Lajitas, Clay Henry Sr. and his son, Clay Henry Jr., both got drunk in the same pen during rutting season, and Jr. killed his father in what Valentine called a drunken brawl over a female. That's one local man's account, passed to Roadside America, and it's the only place I found it. KTRK's version is more delicate, a romantic rival and an age of 23, which would be extraordinarily old for a goat. Treat the patricide as legend until something better turns up. However it happened, Clay Henry Jr. assumed the mayoral title, and by 1996, according to a tip logged by Roadside America, he was drinking 35 to 40 beers a day. Now, I should note, that number comes from a single roadside tourism account, with no veterinary documentation behind it. The same source credits him with a bit role in the Streets of Laredo television miniseries and a filmed segment for Sally Jessy Raphael in 1995. One of the Clay Henrys wasn't buried. He was taxidermied, mounted in the act of chugging a long neck, and stood up on the dance floor of the Starlight Theatre over in the Terlingua ghost town, where he still is. Which goat that is, the sources genuinely disagree on. Roadside America ties the mounted goat to the one who died in 1992. Other accounts say it's Junior. Either way, just standing there, among the tables. Then in 2000, Clay Henry III was elected mayor. That one's straight from ABC News. The story goes that his opposition included a wooden Indian from the Trading Post and a dog, though accounts can't agree whether the dog was called Clyde or Buster, or even which election they all ran in. He won. Now, whether Clay Henry III was actually a biological descendant of the original Clay Henry is genuinely debated locally. The name seems to work as a title more than a bloodline. Each successor gets the same pen, the same name, the same job description: drink beer, be mayor. It's less a family tree and more a franchise. This brings us to the third question, and honestly, the heart of the whole story. Who would attack a goat mayor, and what could possibly motivate them? The answer involves a man named Jim Bob Hargrove, Sunday Blue Laws, and a very sharp blade. Here's what happened. In August 2002, Roadside America logs the mayor being found on Monday the 5th. Jim Bob Hargrove saw Clay Henry III being fed beer on a Sunday. Now, the region's blue laws at the time restricted Sunday alcohol sales. Not drinking. Nobody was breaking a law here, goat or human, and nobody could have been charged over it. But the sight of tourists handing long necks to a goat on a Sunday afternoon was, police said, enough. ABC News reported that Hargrove attacked the animal because he became jealous. Sheriff Ronnie Dodson later told ABC News what witnesses reported. Hargrove kept saying, "You know I ought to go castrate that goat." And, in the sheriff's words, the next morning the goat was found lying with its testicles cut off. There's a widely repeated detail that one of the severed testicles turned up in Hargrove's refrigerator. I've only seen that in later magazine retellings, not in the contemporary reporting, so take it as folklore unless it's nailed down. Hargrove was charged with felony animal cruelty, not assault on a public official, not attempted murder. Because, as ABC News dryly explained, Clay Henry is a goat. That's the whole legal absurdity in one line. The mayor held an office that didn't legally exist, in a town that isn't incorporated, and his attacker couldn't be charged with anything political because the victim was livestock. But here's the thing, Clay Henry III survived. Local ranchers sutured the wounds. The goat made a full recovery, and Sheriff Dodson confirmed the outcome with what might be the best quote in Texas political history. "He's doing fine. He's still drinking beer." I should note, contemporary reporting said Hargrove was facing trial within weeks, and then the record goes quiet. Convicted, acquitted, plea, dismissal, I could find no account of how it ended, so I won't pretend to know. Fourth question, is the dynasty still going? The answer is, it was, as recently as 2019. Clay Henry IV was being presented as mayor when ABC affiliate KTRK visited that year. Ted Rose of the Lajitas General Store said on camera, Clay Henry was duly elected as mayor of Lajitas. Stiff competition comes up from time to time, like Terra Antula and Chuy the Chihuahua, but they don't stand a chance. A photograph dated September 27, 2019, held in the University of North Texas Library's Portal to Texas History, shows the goat pen on the north side of Highway 170. The sign reads, "World-famous Clay Henry, Mayor of Lajitas." Clay Henry IV stands in the foreground. Since then, it gets murkier. More recent write-ups say the trading post and stable where the mayor lived have closed, and that no goat lives there now. So if you're planning the drive, check before you buy the beer. And between the third goat and the fourth, there appears to have been a gap. A 2013 magazine piece described Clay Henry III's death as murky, and the office as apparently vacant. By 2019, there was a fourth goat. What happened in between? How long the office sat empty, how the successor was chosen, I genuinely don't know. And nobody I found reporting on this seems to know either. Meanwhile, the town itself kept changing hands. In February 2000, Lajitas was put up for auction as part of a 2,700-acre Big Bend resort complex. An Austin businessman named Steve Smith bought the whole town and began remaking it as a retreat for the rich. Wine bar, espresso, the works. The trading post reopened in November 2003 after 6 months of renovation. And through all of it, through every ownership change and every reinvention of the town's identity, the goat outlasted the owners. Here's the last question, and it's the one I think matters most. What does it say about a place when the best joke it ever told becomes the truest thing about it? Walter Mischer took a border town that had shrunk to 4 people and rebuilt it as a Wild West fantasy. Bill Ivey nominated a goat as a joke about outsider politicians. A man was charged with a felony for attacking an animal that technically outranked him in an office that technically wasn't real. And 4 goats have now held a title with no legal authority in an unincorporated town in one of the most remote corners of Texas. And for decades, people kept showing up. They drove hours through the Chihuahuan desert to crack open a long neck and feed it to a goat standing behind a fence on Highway 170. The whole thing started as a prank. But the joke outlasted the man who built the resort, the man who nominated the first goat, and at least 2 of the goats themselves. Lajitas was half invented. Clay Henry became real. So here's what I want to know from you. If an unincorporated town can elect a goat to an office that doesn't legally exist, and that goat can sit there drinking on a day when the law says nobody's allowed to sell you one, at what point does the joke stop being a joke and start being actual governance? Tell me what you think below. And if this is the kind of strange, real history you want more of, subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you don't miss the next one.